A veteran's small act of kindness for a mysterious widow sparks a town's cruel whispers, until a shocking revelation flips everything. Who is she, and why does her past silence everyone? Stay to find out. Like, subscribe, hit the bell. Stories that give you chills. He adjusted his faded green jacket, the one he'd worn through too many winters. 60 years old, grey hair tucked under a worn cap, he walked the cracked sidewalks of Millwood, a small town forgotten by time, where the diner's coffee was bitter but warm. His name didn't matter to most, folks just called him the Fix-It Guy. A veteran, though he never spoke of it. His hands, calloused from decades of labour, told stories his lips wouldn't. Once, he'd carried a rifle through deserts. Now he carried a toolbox, fixing pipes, bikes, lives. Millwood's mornings were quiet, save for the hum of distant tractors. He liked it that way. The world had grown loud, but here he could hear his thoughts. Thoughts of a wife gone too soon. A son who hadn't called in years. Loss clung to him like the smell of motor oil on his flannel shirt. Yet his eyes, though tired, held a spark. Hope, maybe, or stubbornness. He'd seen enough to know kindness was a choice, not a gift. Today, like every day, he headed to the community centre. A bulletin board needed fixing. Splintered wood, rusty nails. No one else bothered. He didn't mind. Work kept the ghosts at bay. The air smelled of damp leaves, autumn settling in. His boots crunched on gravel, a rhythm as steady as his heartbeat. At the centre, he knelt, toolbox open, hands moving with practiced ease. A nail here, a hammer tap there. Simple, honest, the kind of work that made sense in a world that often didn't. He didn't notice the stairs at first. Townsfolk passing by, some nodding, others hurrying along. Millwood was a place where everyone knew your business but rarely cared. He wiped sweat from his brow, the morning sun peeking through grey clouds. That's when he saw her. An old woman, maybe 80, sitting alone on a bench across the square. White hair in a neat bun, a faded blue coat too thin for the chill. Her hands clutched something small, metallic, glinting in the light. A medal, he realized. Military. Her face was a map of grief, but her posture was proud. Something about her felt familiar, like a memory he couldn't place. He didn't stare long, didn't want to intrude, but as he hammered another nail, he felt her eyes on him. Not judging, watching. He finished the board, stood, and stretched his aching back. The woman hadn't moved. Her hands trembled slightly, not from cold, but something deeper. He could have walked away. Most would have. Millwood wasn't big on strangers, and she was no local. But his feet carried him toward her, toolbox swinging at his side. "Ma'am," he said softly, tipping his cap. "You all right?" Her eyes met his, sharp despite her age. "Oh, fine, thank you," she replied, voice soft but steady, a faint southern lilt. She tucked the medal into her coat pocket, fingers lingering like it was a lifeline. He nodded, sensing she didn't want to talk. But he noticed her coat, threadbare, a button missing. The kind of thing most wouldn't see. He did. "Got a spare button in my kit," he offered, gesturing to his toolbox. "Could sew it on if you like." She blinked, surprised. A small smile curved her lips, weary but warm. "That's kind of you," she said, "but I won't trouble you." "No trouble," he said, kneeling to rummage through his tools. He pulled out a small sewing kit, the one he kept for emergencies. Her smile grew, just a fraction. "All right then," she said, handing him the coat. He worked carefully, needle threading through worn fabric. The square was quiet, save for the rustle of leaves and distant voices. He didn't ask her name, didn't pry. But as he sewed, she spoke, unprompted. "My husband's," she said, touching the pocket where the medal hid. "He was Army, long time ago." He nodded, focusing on the stitches. "Mine too," he said simply. "No need for more." Veterans understood silence better than words. When he finished, he handed the coat back, button secure. She slipped it on, fingers brushing the new stitch like it meant more than it should. "Thank you," she said, voice thick. He tipped his cap again, stood, and headed back to his work. But something lingered. Her eyes, her medal, her quiet strength. He didn't know it yet, but that small act, sewing a button, had set something in motion. Something bigger than Millwood's sleepy streets could hold. The community centre was busier now, folks trickling in for the morning coffee clatch. He returned to the bulletin board, checking his work. Solid, it'd hold. But as he packed his tools, he felt eyes on him again. Not hers this time. Townsfolk. Some smiled, others whispered. "That's the guy," one said, voice low. "Always fixing stuff for free." Another snorted. Thinks he's a saint or something. He ignored them, used to the chatter. Millwood loved its gossip as much as its coffee. But the woman on the bench stayed in his mind. He glanced back. She was still there, staring at the medal again, lost in thought. He wondered who she was, what her story held. Not out of curiosity, but respect. Veterans carried weight others couldn't see. He decided then he'd check on her tomorrow, just to be sure she was okay. It wasn't much, but it was something. And in Millwood, where dreams faded faster than paint, something was enough. The next morning, the air in Millwood carried the sharp bite of autumn. Leaves crunched under his boots as he walked the familiar path to the community centre. His faded green jacket hung loose, the toolbox swinging at his side. 60 years old, grey hair peeking from his cap, he moved with purpose. The woman from yesterday lingered in his thoughts. Her medal, her quiet dignity. He didn't know her name, but he didn't need to. Veterans recognized their own. At the centre, the bulletin board stood sturdy, his work holding fast. He scanned the square, half expecting her to be gone. But there she was, on the same bench. Her white hair gleamed in the morning sun, blue coat buttoned tight. The medal was in her hands again, catching light like a beacon. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Morning, ma'am," he said, voice low. "Mind if I sit?" She looked up, eyes softening. "Not at all," she replied, scooting over. Her voice held that same southern lilt, steady despite her frail frame. He sat, toolbox at his feet, the bench cold through his jeans. The square was quiet, just the hum of a distant lawnmower. He didn't push her to talk. Silence was enough. But she spoke first, fingers tracing the medal's edge. "This was his pride," she said. "Silver Star, Korea." He never boasted, though. He nodded, picturing a soldier like so many he'd known. "Sounds like a good man," he said. She smiled, faint but real. "The best." They sat a while, the kind of quiet that didn't need filling. He noticed her coat again, clean but worn, like it carried stories of its own. "Got any other buttons need fixing?" he asked, half joking. She chuckled, a sound like rustling paper. "Not today, but I'll let you know." He liked her spirit. It reminded him of his wife, gone 5 years now. She'd had that same spark even at the end. Before he left, he pulled a small thermos from his bag. "Coffee," he said, offering it. "Not great, but it's warm." Her hands wrapped around the cup, trembling slightly. "Bless you," she said, sipping slowly. He didn't stay long. Just long enough to know she'd be okay for now. As he walked away, he felt lighter, like sharing that coffee meant more than it should. Millwood was waking up, the square filling with familiar faces. Some nodded at him, others didn't. He was used to it. But today, the whispers felt sharper. "There he goes," a woman muttered, clutching her purse. "Playing hero for that old lady." A man in a trucker hat smirked. "Bet he's after something. Nobody's that nice." He kept walking, shoulders square. Gossip was just noise. But at the diner, where he stopped for a refill, the chatter grew louder. "Seen him with that woman," a waitress said, pouring coffee. "She's not even from here." Another customer leaned in. "Probably homeless, he's wasting his time." He sipped his coffee, pretending not to hear. But the words stung. He'd spent years fixing things for Millwood. Bikes, fences, dreams. Never asked for a dime. Why did kindness always come with a question mark? Still, some saw him differently. Old Mr. Jenkins, who ran the hardware store, clapped his shoulder. "You're a good one," he said. "Don't let 'em tell you otherwise." A few others agreed, their smiles warm but fleeting. Millwood was split, as always. Half saw a saint, half saw a fool. He didn't care, or so he told himself. That afternoon, he returned to the square. She was there again, same bench, same medal. This time he brought a spare blanket from his truck. "Gets cold out here," he said, draping it over her shoulders. Her eyes crinkled with gratitude. "You're too kind," she said. "Most folks, they don't see me." He shrugged. "I see you." And he meant it. They talked longer this time. She shared snippets, her husband's laugh, his love for jazz, his death in a war that felt like yesterday. He listened, nodding, offering bits of his own story. "Lost my wife," he said. "Cancer. Still feels like she's just at the store, you know?" She touched his arm, her hand light but sure. "I know." The connection wasn't loud, but it was real. Like soldiers sharing a foxhole, no words needed. But trouble was brewing. The community center's manager, a wiry man named Carl, approached one evening. His tie was too tight, his smile too thin. "Hey, fix it," Carl said, arms crossed. "Folks are talking. You hanging around that woman. It's making people uneasy." He frowned, wiping grease from his hands. Uneasy? She's just sitting there. Carl leaned closer, voice low. She's not local. Could be trouble. And you're not helping playing Good Samaritan. He felt heat rise in his chest. She's a veteran's widow. Deserves respect, not suspicion. Carl's smile faded. Respect's earned, and you're stirring up complaints. Keep it up, and we might rethink your access here. The threat hung heavy, like smoke. The community center was his anchor, his place to fix, to help, to belong. Losing it would cut deep. He thought of his wife, how she'd tell him to stand tall. I'm not doing anything wrong, he said, voice steady. Carl shrugged. Your call, but don't say I didn't warn you. As Carl walked away, he felt the square's eyes on him. Some supportive, others cold. A young couple whispered, pointing. Thinks he's above us, the man said. The woman nodded, probably scamming her. He clenched his jaw, toolbox heavier now. Kindness wasn't supposed to feel like this. But he thought of her, the way her hands held that metal. She wasn't just an old woman. She was a story, a life, a loss. And he'd be damned if he let Millwood's small mind stop him from seeing her. The next day, the conflict grew teeth. He arrived at the square to find a notice on the bulletin board. Community center access restricted, it read. Authorized personnel only. Carl stood nearby, smirking. Told you, he said. You're out unless you play by the rules. He stared at the notice, heart pounding. The center wasn't just a place. It was his purpose. Fixing things kept him sane, kept the ghosts quiet. Now it was slipping away. He looked across the square. She was there, blanket around her shoulders, medal in hand. Her eyes met his, and for a moment he felt stronger. I'm not done yet, he muttered, ripping the notice down. Carl's face reddened. You're making a mistake, he snapped. This is bigger than you. He didn't answer, just walked to the bench, sat beside her, and opened his thermos. Coffee, he asked, voice calm. She smiled, taking the cup. Bless you, she said. The square watched, whispers rising like a storm. He didn't care. Not yet. But the weight was growing. Millwood's judgment, Carl's threats, the risk of losing his place. Kindness was costing him. And deep down, a voice whispered, was it worth it? The days grew colder in Millwood, the autumn wind biting through his faded green jacket. 60 years old, grey hair damp under his cap, he trudged to the square, toolbox heavier than ever. His hands, rough from years of fixing what others ignored, trembled slightly, not from cold, but doubt. The community center's lockout stung. Carl's smirk, the notice, the whispers, they clawed at him. Kindness had always been his anchor, but now it felt like a sinking weight. He'd lost his wife, his son's calls, his place in the world. Was he losing Millwood too? He pushed the thought down, focusing on her. The woman with the white bun, the blue coat, the silver star medal. Her quiet strength kept him coming back. But today, the bench was empty. No blanket, no medal, no trace of her. His stomach twisted. He scanned the square. Kids on bikes, a dog barking, leaves swirling. Nothing. Ma'am, he called softly, as if she might appear. The wind answered instead, sharp and empty. He sat, toolbox at his feet, the bench's cold wood seeping through his jeans. Had she left? Was she sick? Worse, he didn't even know her name. The thought hit hard. She'd been a stranger, yet she'd mattered. Her absence carved a hole he hadn't expected. He clenched his fists, nails biting his palms. Damn it, he muttered, voice cracking. He'd stood up for her, risked his place, his peace. For what? An empty bench? The square buzzed with life, but the stairs felt sharper now. A woman in a red scarf passed, whispering to her friend. Told you she was trouble, she said, loud enough to sting. Probably ran off when he got too close. A man in a denim jacket laughed. Fixit's lost his mind, chasing ghosts now. He kept his head down, but the words burned. Millwood's gossip had teeth, and it was biting deep. At the diner, it got worse. The waitress, usually kind, slid his coffee over with a frown. People say you're stirring trouble, she said, hanging with that woman, tearing down notices. I was helping, he said, voice low. She shrugged. Looks like meddling to me. Carl's got the town council on his side. He gripped the mug, its heat no match for the chill in his chest. The council! If they backed Carl, he'd lose more than the centre. His reputation, his work, his reason to get up each morning. Outside, a group of teens pointed, snickering. There's the hero, one mocked. Where's your old lady now? He walked past, jaw tight, their laughter trailing like smoke. Betrayal wasn't new. The army had promised him a future. then left him with scars and a pension that barely covered rent. His son had promised to visit, then stopped calling. Now Millwood, the town he'd poured his heart into, was turning its back. He felt like a fool. Had he misread her? Was she just a drifter, using his kindness? The doubt gnawed, relentless. That night, alone in his small apartment, he sat at the kitchen table. The room smelled of old wood and motor oil. A single bulb flickered above, casting shadows on the walls. His toolbox sat in the corner, a silent witness to his life. He pulled a small box from a drawer, one he hadn't opened in years. Inside was a photo, him and his wife, laughing at a county fair. Her smile, bright even in faded ink, steadied him. Next to it, his dog tags. Cold, smooth, heavy with memory. He held them, the metal grounding him. "Keep going," she'd said when cancer was winning. "Help who you can. It's who you are." He closed his eyes, breathing deep. The woman on the bench wasn't a ghost. She was real. Her medal, her stories, her loss, they were real. He'd seen her, not just her coat or her age, but her. And that was enough. Even if Millwood laughed, even if she was gone, he'd made a choice. To stand. To care. To fight the indifference that broke people like her. He slipped the dog tags around his neck, the weight familiar. "I'm not done," he whispered, voice firm. Tomorrow he'd go back. Search for her. Face the town. Whatever it took. Because kindness wasn't about winning. It was about refusing to let the world's coldness win. Morning broke over Millwood, the sky a soft grey, heavy with the promise of rain. The 60-year-old veteran, grey hair tucked under his cap, walked to the square, his faded green jacket damp from the mist. His toolbox swung at his side, dog tags cool against his chest. The empty bench haunted him, but he refused to give up. He'd search for her, ask around, do whatever it took. Kindness didn't stop just because it hurt. At the community centre, the air felt different. Townsfolk milled about, their whispers quieter, less venomous. He ignored them, checking the bulletin board for clues. Nothing. Just flyers for bake sales and lost cats. He was about to leave when a voice stopped him. "Excuse me, sir," a man said, stepping forward. Tall, in his 50s, wearing a crisp suit and a military pin on his lapel. His face was kind but serious, eyes scanning the veteran with respect. "You're the one who helped my mother?" he said. The veteran frowned, confused. "Your mother?" The man nodded, pulling a photo from his wallet. There she was, white hair, blue coat, silver star medal in her hands. "My name's Edward," he said. "My mother, Clara, told me about you. The coffee, the blanket, the button." Clara. Her name hit like a warm breeze. "She's all right?" the veteran asked, voice tight. Edward smiled faintly. "She's home now, weak but stubborn. She insisted I find you." He explained. Clara was a Korean war widow, her husband a hero who'd saved his squad. She'd spent decades volunteering at VA hospitals, counseling veterans, never asking for recognition. But age and illness had slowed her, and Millwood's coldness had worn her down. "She came here to feel closer to my father," Edward said. "His old unit trained nearby. That medal, it's all she has left of him." The veteran listened, heart heavy. He'd seen her strength, but not the depth of her story. "Why'd she leave?" he asked. Edward's face darkened. "The town, the stairs, the whispers. She felt like a burden. But you made her feel seen." He reached into his coat, pulling out a letter. "She wrote this for you." The veteran took it, hands unsteady. The envelope was simple, her handwriting elegant despite her age. He didn't open it yet. It felt too big, too real. Edward clasped his shoulder. "You gave her hope. That's no small thing." Before the veteran could respond, a commotion stirred the square. Carl, the centre's manager, stormed over, face red. "You're still here?" he snapped. "I told you, you're done." The veteran stood tall, dog tags glinting under his jacket. "I'm not leaving," he said, voice calm but firm. Carl opened his mouth, but Edward stepped in. "Actually, you're the one who's done," he said, voice sharp. He held up a document, official, stamped with a VA seal. "My mother's account here was mishandled. Fees charged illegally. I've reported it to the state." Carl paled, stammering. "That's a misunderstanding." Edward didn't flinch. "The council knows. So does the local paper. You'll be lucky to keep your job." The square went silent, townsfolk watching, some ashamed, others stunned. The waitress from the diner stepped forward, head low. "I'm sorry," she said. "I believed the gossip. I was wrong." Others murmured agreement, their faces soft with regret. The veteran said nothing, just clutched the letter. He didn't need their apologies. He needed Clara to be okay. That evening, alone in his apartment, he opened the letter. Her words were simple, written in careful script. You saw me when no one else did. My husband always said one kind soul could change the world. You're that soul. Thank you. A small pressed flower fell out, delicate like her. He held it, throat tight, eyes burning. He hadn't won a war or saved a life. He'd just sewn a button, shared coffee, listened. But it was enough. Enough to remind him who he was. The next week, Millwood changed. The community centre announced a new program, free repairs for veterans and their families. The veteran led it, his toolbox back in action. Townsfolk volunteered, even the teens who'd mocked him. The diner started a pay-it-forward coffee fund, inspired by his thermos. Mr. Jenkins donated supplies, his gruff voice soft with pride. You showed 'em, he said. Good on you. Clara's story spread, her quiet heroism a spark that lit the town. The council issued an apology, and Carl was quietly replaced. The square's bench became Clara's corner, a plaque honouring her husband's sacrifice. The veteran visited often, sometimes leaving a flower. He and Edward stayed in touch, and Clara called once, her voice frail but warm. You're family now, she said. He smiled, dog tags heavy around his neck. Millwood wasn't perfect. Gossip still simmered, and old habits died hard. But the air felt lighter, the square warmer. One man's kindness, one choice to see, to stand, had cracked the town's hard shell. He found peace in the work, in the veterans who came to him, their stories echoing Clara's. His son even called, voice hesitant but real. I heard what you did, he said. I'm proud. The veteran didn't need medals or headlines. He had Clara's letter, the flower, the square. He had purpose. And that was enough. Years later, Millwood remembered him. Not as the fix-it guy, but as the man who stood when others turned away. Clara's Corner became a gathering place, where veterans shared stories, where kids learned respect. The community centre's walls held photos. Him with Clara, him with tools, him smiling. His legacy wasn't loud, but it was deep. Kindness, he'd learned, wasn't just a moment. It was a ripple, touching lives he'd never see. One evening, he walked to Clara's Corner, the sky ablaze with sunset. His green jacket was older now, his hair whiter, but his step was steady. He sat, toolbox at his feet, and pulled the pressed flower from his pocket. It was faded but whole. Like him. Like Clara. Like the world when you chose to care. He smiled, the wind soft, the square alive with voices. Sometimes one person standing for what's right was worth 1,000 standing for nothing. If this story moved you, type STAND in the comments. Share who's stood for you, who you've stood for. Like, subscribe, hit the bell. These stories matter.